Good evening and welcome to today's edition of Mesme Politics. It's Sunday night, the 13th of December, 2020. Exactly 1 year on from that horrific day after the night before, where we were reckoning with the biggest Labour Party defeat in terms of seats in, I believe it was 85 years. Anyway, I'm Toby Lepati Mesme. Over the next half hour, I'll be bringing you through all the latest in UK and US politics from a leftist perspective. Today, just the UK. You know, we won't make a habit of it, but there's not really anything in the US we want to talk about today. Obviously, loads is going on, but the schedule is filled up with stuff closer to home today, although, of course, we will cross there if something uniquely insane happens to happen in the United States. On today's show, Brexit talks have been extended. Are we on an inevitable path towards a deal? We discuss. Modelling from Opinion. They got the election, called it pretty much spot on in 2019. 1 year on, what can we learn about the country from a poll that has taken into consideration the views of thousands of Brits? And Jeremy Corbyn launches a new project for peace and for social justice around the world. What impact can it have? What does it mean? We'll be talking about that. Welcome along. You can get in touch at any time in the chat. This is a live, interactive politics show, and we're very glad to have you with us. We'll start with the first story of the day. The Brexit talks have been extended. Sunday was meant to be the deadline. We were allegedly looking down the barrel of a no deal right about now. Well, that no deal certainly did not appear as certain quarters claimed it would. We'll have a listen to what we heard this morning from European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. And then we'll see what Mr. Johnson, the Prime Minister, has to say.
Constructive and useful phone call with Prime Minister Boris Johnson. We discussed the major unsolved topics. Our negotiation teams have been working day and night over the recent days. And despite the exhaustion after almost 1 year of negotiations, and despite the fact that deadlines have been missed over and over, we both think that it is responsible at this point in time to go the extra mile. We have accordingly mandated our negotiators to continue the talks and to see whether an agreement can be reached, even at this late stage. The negotiations continue here in Brussels. Thank you so much.
Well, I've just talked to Ursula von der Leyen and updated the Cabinet about the contents of the call. And the idea was that when we went out on Wednesday, the hope was that we were going to be able to finish things off on today if there was a deal to be done. As things stand, and this was basically what Ursula and I agreed, I'm afraid we're still very far apart on some key things. But where there's life, there's hope. We're going to keep talking to see what we can do. The UK certainly won't be walking away from the talks. I think people would expect us to go the extra mile. I repeated my offer, which is, if it's necessary to talk to other capitals, and I'm very happy to do that. The Commission very determined to keep the negotiations on the way that they've been done between us and the Commission. That's fine. But I've got to repeat, the most likely thing now is, of course, that we have to get ready for WTO terms, Australia terms. And don't forget, everybody, we've made huge preparations for this. We've now been at this for 4.5 years.
Australia always means no deal.
Whatever happens, the UK will do very, very well. The best thing to do now for everybody is to follow up all the work that's been done over the last 4.5 years. Colossal amount of preparation at our ports everywhere across the UK. Get ready to trade on WTO terms, and there is a clarity and a simplicity in that approach that has its own advantages. It's not where we wanted to get to, but if we have to end up with that solution, the UK is more than prepared.
Johnson is lying through his teeth. He knows he hasn't been able to drag a miraculous concession out of the EU because broadly they hold most of the cards. Let's not be, hysterical about it. There are various areas where the British have certain things that the European Union want. Therefore, there's leverage. But we will be hurt more by a no-deal outcome by far than most of the European Union. That's why just bluster and charm from Johnson is not going to actually move the dial on this very much. What we hear here basically implies there is a deal. Johnson is going to spin this. He's going to spin it as a win. Look, finally, we've pulled the rug out from under those pesky Europeans again. We've made a deal against all the doomsters' predictions, etc., etc., etc. It will be taken domestically as a win, because even though it's a dog's Brexit, it won't be quite as bad as what a no deal would have been like. It will not have those catastrophic elements to it. There will be a deal this coming week. I lost my nerve on this. Started to buy in and believe maybe there'd be a no deal. I go back to my prior position. There will be a deal. No deal's a red herring. Except they got me this time and I fell for it. But it's a red herring. It's not going to happen. If it was going to happen, it would have been today. And that is final conclusion on the matter. The EU aren't blinking. No one's moving. The Tory position is illogical because they are suggesting going for an environment that will be incredibly politically damaging. Most of the cabinet accept this, with high tariffs rather than the possibility of some tariffs later down the road if they fancy going the full race to the bottom route. It is quite worrying that they are hysterical over the prospect of having to not raise standards or having lower standards. Of all things, all qualms we could have with the European Union, surely high standards on environment and stuff is not... It's not what we should be worried about. That's one of the things that's decent. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not enough, but it's a floor. These people want to go below the floor. That's what they're arguing with the Europeans about. It's ridiculous. This whole project, the right-wing Brexit project, right? The project that ran the Vote Leave campaign broadly, and the official Vote Leave campaign, not the socialist offshoots. And the people that, are in the Tory party, the Tory Eurosceptics, the people in power running this government, the whole ideology is built off hostility to Europeans and immigrants. That's how they did it. Those are the images on which they sold it. That is how they're doing it now. They're talking about boats fending off the Europeans. We've got newspaper headlines saying, "Shove your cake, Monsieur Barnier," and all this. It is ridiculous. It is... mildly, to put it one way, xenophobic. We are offending any number of people on the world stage. There's nothing remotely progressive or socialist about it. It's entirely separate from my views on the cold hard economics of departure from the European Union, looking at it from a post-capitalist perspective. If I look at it in that sense, the logical thing is to leave the European Union. But what is happening here is not a necessity of leaving the European Union. What it is a specific ideological project. The people running the show right now hate Europe, hate Europeans, want to distance themselves as far as possible from them for purely ideological, not logical, pragmatic or practical reasons. That's why where we are right now is so precarious, so hostile, so worrying. There will be a boost to Johnson's prospects once he gets a deal. Expectations have been so low. Essentially, any hardship caused by a hard Brexit, more or less mixed in with COVID, it won't be as catastrophic as WTO. Nothing all sort of clogged up, and we won't be running out of tins of beans and all these ridiculous scenarios. So they're going to get away with this. They're going to spin it as a victory, and it will either help or be lukewarm for the government. There is that hypothetical disaster that would spell the end of Tory governance at the next election, as I suspected deep down, not going to come to pass. Johnson obviously thought about it in the same way I did, that if there's a no deal, Keir Starmer shoe-in to be the next Prime Minister. There's not going to be a no deal. Keir Starmer is not a shoe-in to be the next Prime Minister. We'll put it that way. That might be a bit of an understatement, but we will see. We'll wait to see the rollout of policy in 2021 and see how the government do as well in terms of the, maybe the vaccines will blow up or something. I mean, they won't. They've been checked. And I don't want them... That was a bad way of putting it, because I don't want anything to go wrong with the vaccines. They've been tested, and I do advise you get a vaccine. But, I don't know, they'll carry a massive syringe around Britain and it'll explode on the M45. Something ludicrous happens then. But other than that, the vaccine rollout and the closure of Brexit is going to be nothing but excellent news for the Johnson government. Simple as that, basically. The relationship that we're fostering with Europe coming out of this is not stable. It's moving. The tectonic plates are shifting at a quite unprecedented pace. The relationship will absolutely have to be redone and renegotiated at some point. People talk about rejoin. People talk about Norway Plus. People talk about some sort of Switzerland, Norway style agreement. Norway, Switzerland Plus. Other people talk about simply, unification of Ireland. And some sort of... I would not be arguing for rejoin. I would be coming at it from a position of... once the right people are in government, you want to create a high standards, quality, jobs first, post-Brexit settlement. That's not anywhere near us right now. And the generational divide in Britain would dictate that the electorate is only going to get more pro-EU as time goes on. Therefore, in the next couple of decades, rejoin is not something that I will confidently say won't happen. It's not something I'll support, something I want to happen, save, if the circumstances at the time are so dire, but that is something that could happen. It's not something I'm arguing for. It would be suicide for Labour to adopt that any time in the near future, but it is something that could happen. But as I say, I'd be arguing for a more sustainable, maybe unify Ireland, and then England, Scotland, Wales, or possibly England and Wales, or possibly just England, create a settlement that has a closer relationship, but does not lock us in to the neoliberal, suffocating bind that is the European Union, and preferably the single market, but it really depends on where we're at the time. I'm no fan of the single market, but in a practical sense, at some point, maybe we'll be inside it again. I don't know. We'll see. But it does have to be redone, and this is not the end by any means, but it is the beginning of the end of the hard break. The hard break will be happening, whatever happens as we head into 2021. Next story of the day. Modelling from opinion 1 year on from the 2019 general election. You pay direct your attention towards the screen right now. We'll have a look. This is the same pollster that correctly predicted the vote share almost entirely right. Entirely right for the Tories and Labour for the 2019 election. What do we got right now? Conservatives up 2 points on 40% from the last poll. Labour down 2 points from the last poll on 38%. The Conservatives, in that case, would lose 52 seats, win 313. Labour would be on 252 seats. That would be a gain of 50. And that scenario in Parliament would foster a Tory minority government. There would not be a progressive alliance there. You would have a Tory government without a majority. Minority Johnson administration that would either limp along for a year or so, or indeed go straight back for another general election, depending on how the arithmetic with the Northern Irish MPs is. Because if you've got 13, 14 DUP MPs, very unlikely, but if you did, could cobble something together. It would really depend, but there'd be no viable path for Starmer to form a government there. Alas, this is all hypothetical, though, of course. We are not going to be going to the polls anytime soon. The interesting stuff in this data is that the swing to Labour is higher among Leave voters than Remain voters. So if you look, voting intention split by Brexit vote, swing 5.5% to Labour. They are now on 20% of Leave voters. 63% of Leave voters for the Tories, as opposed to 16% for Labour in the election and 70% for the Tories in the election. Whereas Remain voters, 49% were for Labour, 20% were for the Conservatives. Now it's 53% for Labour and 21% for the Conservatives. They made a small gain as Brexit was moving off the agenda, not so much now. Conservative retention split by Brexit vote. Labour have taken 6%. I believe other parties have taken 2%, 14% don't know. They've still got 78% of them, whereas 70% of the Conservative 2019 Remain voters are still there. 5% have gone to Labour, 7% have gone to other parties, 18% don't know. The shift is not hugely towards Labour right now. A lot of it is I don't know, so it muddies the numbers here a bit. What we do know is 500,000 Lib Dem voters have gone to Labour, but also 500,000 Tory voters have gone to Labour, which is much better than some of us thought it might be. It's not just the Lib Dems, it's the Lib Dems and the Tories. I believe 500,000 possibly from the Greens as well, although now Green voters are gaining. The Green Party is gaining from Labour voters, presumably agitated left-wingers are leaving the base off the back of the Corbyn situation. If we go on here, the vote share for the Lib Dems on this poll is 6%, unmoving. Green up 4%. And I'll just read from Chris Curtis of Opinion here. The larger sample size also allows us to break the data down more granularly and have more trust in the data from each of the cross breaks. All the following numbers compare the breakdown on this poll with the breakdown from our poll on election day last year. The most important thing we are seeing is a bigger swing to Labour among Leave voters than Remain voters. However, this is more caused by Leave voters going off the Tories than being won over to Labour. Conservative retention is much higher among their Remain voters, 78%, than their Leave voters, 70%. Defection to Labour is similar among both groups, though, with the difference made up by Conservative Leavers moving to don't know. It also isn't really true to say that Labour are only winning over Lib Dems and Greens, but not Tories. If you look at net movement, number of voters won over, minus the number of votes going other way, Labour has gained roughly 500,000 votes from the Tories. This is roughly the same as the number of net movement to Labour from the Greens and Lib Dems combined. Apologies, so 1 million gained, 500,000 from the Tories, 500,000 from Green and Lib Dems, so it's not just Remain central middle class that are moving to Sir Keir Starmer. You've actually got 500,000 Tories moving towards Keir Starmer, which is undeniably good. This has changed over the past few weeks, though, partly caused by Labour defections to the Greens over the Corbyn stuff. So they have begun to sacrifice what gains they were making, which is never what you want to hear. Very worrying, that. So 5.5 swing from Leave voters, 1.5 swing from Remainers. Starmer's appeal to Leavers is yet to be comprehensively tested, but it looks like his approach of drop the Brexit divisions and do what you should have done all along is very much working. It's all a two-horse race here, if we really look at it, right? Labour and the Tories, the big players. There are no, the chaos of 2019 prior to Johnson forming a government. It's a two-horse race. It's Johnson-Starmer. It's becoming more presidential. It's Labour-Tory, right? And then you've got the SNP, who are basically operating a one-party state in Scotland at the moment, because the Scots Tories have no hope, and Scottish Labour are, unfortunately, because I like their leader, less than irrelevant at the moment. Although, of course, things can always change, but I would bet you good amount of money and success that Richard Leonard will never be First Minister in Scotland and will probably not even overtake the Tories. Of course, I hope otherwise. Now, but it's good to have a socialist leader in place, always. Now, in The Observer, where this was published, it's spun to look good. It's lukewarm for Starmer, especially looking at the leakage to the Greens. Okay? Because that doesn't help the Greens in any way, apart from up their vote share, but it does doom Labour if 2, 3, 4% of their potential voters, especially young people who seemingly do not trust Starmer at all, surprise, surprise, if they're switching, you're in trouble, because that's a big blockage on your way to trying to get into government, and it's been really spun to look good. It is lukewarm. There's good bits of this news, but as I say, there's a lot of caveats here. The default in the polls going off this appears to be we're back to the default being a small Tory lead. It was a small Labour lead, then it was a dead heat. We're back to the default being a small Tory lead. Circumstances have combined, be it Labour disunity, be it vaccine, be it Brexit coming to a close. People are rallying around the government. People are feeling confident in the government again. Not more confident. They're still not confident in it, but more confident. The damage has not been undone from the disaster of handling COVID-19 when they had a 10, 20, 22-point lead. But they're back ahead. And they look like, they'd be able to form a government, albeit a very unstable government if an election was held again now. Labour have made big progress from that point, aided by COVID, aided by a good first impression of a leader. They need to push now. They need to push beyond. They need to put old divisions behind them, and they need to put forward a vision, a unifying vision that unifies the party, gets the left flank on board, and look to the country. I'll keep saying it, that's what they have to do. Whereas the Tories, my advice to the Tories would be capitalise on the good news. Don't do anything stupid. Don't let Jacob Rees-Mogg go on LBC. Don't, calm down the chumocracy. Just try and get a Brexit deal done. Roll out the vaccines. Roll out Matt Hancock to fake cry on the news. And you're plain sailing, basically, because the opposition are looking like headless chickens. And these are the people that called Corbyn's Labour disunified. Honestly. Deeply, deeply unserious people. Okay, final story of the day. You're not even ready for it. Jeremy Corbyn, the former leader of the Labour Party, has launched a new project. It is called the Project for Peace and Justice. It's founded by Jeremy Corbyn, and the mission is to bring people together for social and economic justice, peace and human rights in Britain and across the world. This is their mission statement. To bring people together for social and economic justice, peace, human rights in Britain and across the world. The Peace and Justice Project will back campaigns, commission reports, and develop progressive networks in Britain and across the world. The Peace and Justice Project will work with Labour and social movements and provide platforms to those campaigning for change for the many, not the few. From wars and pandemics to economic and environmental crises, the events of recent years have exposed the failures of our systems. Inequality, insecurity, and human rights abuses have increased. Domestic and international problems and injustices can no longer be separated. We need to build solidarity beyond borders and across communities and solve our common problems together. Jeremy Corbyn is a lifelong advocate for peace and for socialism. After stepping down as leader of the Labour Party, he is using his experience and connections to create a platform, network and resource that can support campaigners for social justice and progressive change. Our areas of focus will be poverty, inequality and corporate power, global cooperation and international peace, colonialism and self-determination, democracy and human rights, and of course climate justice. The Peace and Justice Project will combine analysis, campaigning and networking. It will shine a light on injustices, offer space and hope to those driving change, and generate ideas for a future that works for the many, not the few. And I defer to Jeremy Corbyn.
Today, I'm announcing a new project for the new year. I'm very excited about it, and I hope you will be too. Next month, we're kicking off the Peace and Justice Project. We're going to bring people together for social justice, peace, and human rights in Britain and across the world. I'm telling you about it now because I want you to be part of it. It's been a difficult year for all of us. The coronavirus pandemic has exposed and deepened the scale of injustice and inequality in our society. Its mishandling and devastating human consequences have shown the inability of our privatised, hollowed-out systems to meet the challenges of our time. The Black Lives Matter movement has fuelled a global response to the scourge of racism. Wildfires across Australia, Russia, and the United States have driven home the fact that none of us are safe from the climate crisis. After years of endless wars, economic crisis, increasing inequality and insecurity, it's become clear that our politics and economic systems have failed and are in fact part of the problem. Injustices and threats at home and abroad cannot be separated. What's happened this year has shown us how connected we all are. We need solidarity beyond our borders and across communities to solve our common problems together. The Peace and Justice Project is there to create space, hope, and opportunity for those campaigning for social justice and a future that works for the many, not just the few. We'll work with unions and social movements to build a network of campaigners, grassroots activists, thinkers, and yes, leaders of tomorrow as well, to share experiences and generate ideas about solutions to our common problems. We will combine research and analysis with campaigning and organising. And we can build on the popular socialist policies developed in the Labour Party over the past 5 years. Whether it's Rolls-Royce workers defending their jobs in Bartleswick or the huge protest movement of farmers in India, whether it's children going hungry here in one of the world's richest countries or those languishing as refugees from war and crisis, we will support those campaigning for peace and for justice. That is just a taster. This project will not be a substitute for any other campaign or organisation. It will be a resource and a platform to work together for progressive change. In January, I'll be able to say more when we have our launch event. I'll be joined by some fantastic campaigners. That means you. Before we go, sign up to our launch event now. The information is just about to come on the screen. We're going to build something important together. This year, many of us have felt powerless in the face of forces beyond our control. It does not have to be like that. Things can, and they will, change.
It's excellent stuff. It looks like an excellent project. We've got people speaking. We've got Len McCluskey, we've got Zara Sultana, Scarlett Westbrook, Yanis Varoufakis. You've got Baroness Christine Blower, Ronnie Casgrills. You've got good people involved with this. It looks like it's going to be good. Some people were talking about a third party. It's not really Jeremy's style. I would have been very surprised if such a thing had been brought about. But yes, excellent, brilliant, fully on board, signed up. You should all sign up. That's thecorbynproject.com. And do whatever you can to help. Good stuff. Good platform for progressive politics in the UK and around the world. And very much, he just keeps going, doesn't he, Corbyn? This is sort of this is what he probably wanted to be doing when he was bogged down in Brexit negotiations for months on end with the Theresa May administration. This is what he's about, right? The internationalist element of it, the element of it that was used to pit him against the communities he wanted to represent. But we have to develop an understanding in this country that on these issues, time and time again, that man has been proven right. And unless we look at the world in an interconnected, interdependent, solidaristic way, we will all fall. It's not an argument for economic globalisation. You could see it as an argument against it. It's an argument for cooperation, peace, human rights and internationalism. Simple as that. That has to go hand in hand with any redistributive project, even though that struggled to connect, particularly with older voters. That's where it faltered. That's one of the, when people talked about him being too friendly with terrorists and all this, that was just, it's a dog whistle for he's an internationalist. He believes in international cooperation. It was always a smear, but it was a smear trying to use one of the best qualities of Jeremy Corbyn against him, to pit him against British workers trying to get a fair deal, even though that is an illogical position to take. This will be a new power base for Corbyn, particularly as potential legal wranglings come to the fore, which is always good. He now has an organisation that will potentially be very influential behind him. That's powerful. It is not to be dismissed. Do not dismiss or underestimate the power of this or where it could go. The young approval ratings for Keir Starmer are obscene. And stuff like this. And I know they were in the red for Corbyn towards the end. And that was primarily to do with Brexit, that one. Because he really connected with young people, but young people were overwhelmingly for Remain and they felt a bit miffed. But it was nowhere near as catastrophic as Starmer's ratings. And nowhere near catastrophic as his broader national ratings. It was in the negative, but it was more how Johnson is with the public now, if not better. He was never the least popular opposition leader with young people. Never. He held ground there when the rest of his popularity collapsed around him. And that tells you something. It tells you something about the ability of younger people to see through the lies conventional media outlets put out. Because even though people weren't keen at the end because of Brexit, they knew the man wasn't evil. Whereas the people reading newspapers thought the man was evil. Don't dismiss or underestimate this, is all I'm saying. This could be the start of something great. People are talking of it evolving into a party. I don't know. That would be a good gun to hold to Keir Starmer's head, of course. In terms of social democratic Labour Party style, but to the left. Because if people don't believe a big amount of the Labour base will buy into that, they're delusioned. And if they don't think that'll have an effect on them electorally, they're delusioned. And if they don't think they need the left on board to win an election or form a government with Labour, they're also delusional. That's it from me today. We will be back tomorrow, 7 PM Greenwich Mean Time. Hope you'll be tuning in with plenty more on everything going on in UK and US politics from a leftist perspective. This has been Mesme Politics. Have a nice rest of your Sunday night. Hope your weekend was good. I'm Toby Lapati Mesme.